And you found us. I know sometimes we have a hard time finding ourselves, and we're in the dry part of California, the fire-free part. Oh boy. Anyway, hello everyone. Oh, I got to get rid of this call. I got a call. They say you're in the fire-free part of California, Emil. Really? You got to go with that? Hey, it's Emil. It's Emil Guillermo. Emil Amok to you. Welcome to our program. This is Emil Amok's Takeout, my takes on all things considerable. I have to admit, I'm bummed out. I was bummed out yesterday. It was a national day of mourning, and so I took it. There was no mail delivery. That's not why I was in mourning. It was mourning for Jimmy Carter. I saw that funeral, and that's the ideal Donald Trump. That's the ideal Donald Trump we want to see. We want to see Donald Trump next to President Obama, front row of the pew at the National Cathedral, being nice, playing nice. Donald Trump doesn't play that nice all the time. That was what you want to see from Donald Trump going into 2025, going into his presidency as number 47. I don't know if we're going to see that. Of course, we don't know what they said. They look like they got along. Even Trump made fun of, hey, how they all got along. The 5 living presidents, Clinton, Bush, Obama, Biden, and Trump, there as they watch the service at the National Cathedral for Jimmy Carter. I think all Americans should see that. They should watch that as a reminder of the way America can be, an ideal sense of America, of people getting along. And find it on C-SPAN, find it on YouTube, but watch that. I think it's especially a kind of thing that we need now as we consider fires, as we consider the national disaster. Well, it's contained there in Los Angeles, but it is a national disaster because it's going to take billions of dollars, and it's not going to stop. The threat of that isn't going to stop unless there is some kind of national commitment to a recognition of climate change and what we can do about that. So, all that compounded, and then, we say farewell to Carter, who from Washington went back to Plains. He was buried last night, or laid to rest at his home in Plains. And then the fires, right? The fires start picking up again today. And so the big news, of course, today is, well, it happened yesterday afternoon. The Supreme Court said that it was not going to stop the sentencing of Donald Trump. And so what Trump shows up today? That was the big question. He didn't have to show up to the court in New York to hear the sentence on the falsification of business documents case in New York, the 34 felony counts. But that was sort of the big question mark. What would happen? What would Donald Trump say? What would Judge Juan Marchand say? Although he pretty much said what he was going to say in the memo. And so I thought, okay, let's bring up Professor Daniel Phil Gonzalez, who has a JD. He's my friend, College of Ethnic Studies, San Francisco State University. Let's bring him in. Let's talk about this idea of this discharge, a no penalty discharge. The official term is, what is the official? It was a. Well, I'll bring Dan up. Dan. Ooh, Dan. Am I breaking up there, Dan? Can you hear me?
Yeah. Let's see if it holds steady. Hello.
Yeah. So, Dan, this discharge of the case.
See, you're. Now
I'm hearing you. I am hearing you.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm hearing you. Okay. So, it was a surprise to me. I thought Donald Trump was going to be, well, he was more polite, but he was still whiny. He was a low-key whine. And Marchand however, was really, I thought, so deferential. It's like, why even, he could have just said, here's the sentence, see you later. And he ended it saying, Godspeed to you, good luck. But what did you think of today's proceedings where the sentencing was handed out? You knew it wasn't going to get stopped, but here he is. Here we have a felon, a convicted felon who will be.
Wow, you're breaking up like crazy.
You can't hear me,
I
huh?
have a good. No, you're frozen.
Yeah, I can hear you.
I can hear you, but you're frozen.
Oh.
Okay. Real quickly, first of all, Blanche was utterly inane. his defense's statements in defense of Trump were short and concise and less than bare minimum, right? So I thought that was comical.
Yeah.
Trump was a whiner. He just kept saying he sounded like a victim. Poor is me. They did this to me. I did nothing wrong. I'm a victim here. And then he started doing some aggressive stuff like pointing to a DOJ official that was in the room, that kind of thing. And that's threatening. Okay, coming from him, that's threatening. And so on the one hand, for the most part of his statement, he was a little victim, He really acted like a wimp. His words were strong, but his attitude and behavior were wimpy, with the exception of pointing to a DOJ official, at least to my knowledge, as yet. I'm sure he will be, or she will be by the end of day.
He also went after Michael Cohen. He also went after Michael
but that's easy. That's easy. And it's the usual stuff. This guy was discredited. He was disbarred. Yeah, okay. But all of the people that he he made statements about, most of them got convicted of something. Man, all of the testimony that he gave, and all of the evidence that he rendered to the DOJ and to the FBI and
Dan, you froze.
Reported in his statements.
Yeah. Are you
so
froze
it
there?
Wasn't only Trump, right?
Yeah. It wasn't only Trump, but what he also tried to throw his. Oh, we lost Dan. Dan, come back, Dan. No, we lost him. Oh, there you are.
For a moment.
All right, so Dan, all right, let's hope we have a stable connection.
Yeah, well, that's what you get for saying the fire-free area,
Yeah, we are fire-free. We're just not technically, we're not free of our technical challenges here. What I found interesting is he tried to blame the accountants. He kept saying that, hey, I filed, these were legal expenses, and I called a legal expense a legal expense.
Who also
but
pled
he
guilty.
Failed. Yeah, but he failed to mention that the legal expenses were to pay off, a hush money thing, right? Oh, hold on. Okay, all right.
The accountant also pled guilty.
Yeah, the accountant also pled guilty. Yes. So, in a lot of ways, his time to speak was kind of, I don't know if it helped him at all.
It didn't. All of the people that he was mentioning, right? Most of them pled out. All the accountant said, "Yeah, I did that stuff," and they pled out.
Yeah.
So,
but
where's that?
But Trump's point is that they called I called the legal expense a legal expense, and I got indicted for that, and that's wrong. That's the falsification of documents. They weren't legal expenses. They were, monies to pay off the hush money, right?
Yeah, well, yeah. He said it was all legal. Okay, and it was a legal transaction. That's all he's saying. Is it's a legal.
Oh, Dan, you're cutting out, man.
It was intended to interfere. That's what his intent was. Okay, that was what his intent was.
Yeah.
So
All right. Oh,
Put it in
well,
context. He did all kinds of stuff that was wrong.
and so given that, that's where the disappointment comes in that Judge Juan Marchand essentially said, he's really saying, look, I'm going to do as much as I can, but pretty much you're protected by the office. You're going to be president, and the law says it's the office, not the occupant. So I'm going to respect the office, and we can't throw the book at you, but we can do as much as we can, and we can honor the jury. That's what we're honoring the jury's verdict. That's what this was about. Oh, Dan, you're frozen. Well, I don't know. Oh, Dan. Professor Dan is and we're out of the fire zone, but I don't think I've seen our technical stuff act this squirrely before. Oh well, what can I say? All right, shall we start over again? Yeah, it's that kind of day. It's that kind of day. What can I say? Now, it's been depressing because the confluence of things. Let's see, Dan, do we have Dan there? I saw you moving your eyebrows. I guess not. I guess not. Oh well. Oh, and oh, there it. You can't hear me now?
It was was a okay. He could afford to try and be conciliatory. All right, that's fine. But he's still going to be on the hunt squad for all of the people that believe Mr. Trump. Okay, and that's a lot of people believe Mr. Trump. It's as simple as that. He circulated the same stuff, the same manure, huge pile of it, right? Condensed it a little bit into his own statement, but it, from a factual point of view, it was worthless. How about start with landslide? Landslide.
Yeah, landslide. Yeah, Massey says I won the election. Massive landslide.
Victories, right? So he was making all kinds of false statements in the process of addressing the court and the general public. So does he care, about the court process? Does he have any respect or reverence for the court process? He doesn't respect anything, and say what he's going to say. So let's do it. This is all noise. The good stuff is he's got the label. He's a felon. He's going to be the first president in all of America. That's important.
And
I gotta wait for the connection to get redone. Second point.
Go ahead.
He'll keep raising this issue because all through.
Oh, Dan, you keep cutting out, man. I don't know. Every time I try to talk to San Francisco, this happens. There's Professor.
His own. Yes, it's happening. His presidency, because they're going to keep appealing. Every time they appeal, right, the felonious counts come up again, right, and the whole public and the whole world is reminded that the guy's a felony. Well, who's causing that? He's causing that. Why? Because he wants to fight this thing, and even if he succeeds,
Oh, Dan is. I know, Dan.
For his own ego. It's driving all of this is his ego. And he'll reminding the whole world, I'm a felon.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's sort of, a lot of people will say, it doesn't mean anything. It's an unconditional discharge, right? That's a phrase. Because because of the immunity given the office. But
So
I think Marshawn was strong. Oh,
yeah, he was
we're not
strong,
getting it.
but he was, not overly. I mean, he was just clean.
Yeah, yeah, but he
You know,
kept it to
a firm.
the let's honor the jury. Let's honor the jury. Let's honor the jury's verdict. Let's finalize this, and then you can go along with your appeals. And Godspeed to you, Mr. Trump. I mean, it was he probably could have even shortened it, but all right. So to get to the
Yeah,
point of being labeled a felon, being a convicted felon, the first in history who will be inaugurated as president. Is the shame going to work? Does the shame factor have an impact?
no, not really. I mean, it's not gonna on him. On him, yes. On his ego, yes. And
Yeah.
the general public, and like, no, accepts the fact that he was convicted, that he's a felon. They see him as a fraud. I mean, 34 contiguous counts of fraud. The guy's a fraud. Is he a fraud in many other ways as well?
Yeah.
Absolutely. But this was the only case.
Yeah. Yeah. This is the only case. I mean, it's unfortunate because the other three cases, the other three big
Still
ones.
forward. And
Yeah.
then
Oh, we lost Dan. Oh well. I wanted to get Dan to let him sort of weigh in on why Trump did what he did. Oh, here he's back.
the
Okay.
the earlier DAs, right, or
Yeah.
DA, I
Dan, your connection is bad. I don't know what's wrong. You're
conclusively, and they were also worried about the president or former president on trial, so they didn't do it. But given time and given so,
okay. Well, Dan,
and guess what? A jury found him guilty. Well, actually,
yeah,
civil
and that's
offense was liable.
yeah. Well, we have other civil offenses that he was found guilty of, or that he's liable for. Most notably, the E. Jean Carroll case. $5 million worth. So, Dan, I don't know. This isn't working. This isn't working, man. I don't know what's wrong, but we're gonna have to. All right, I'll try one. Oh no, your signal went bad for some reason. So I don't know if it's my end or your end, but but I think we should end our discussion. Um, and I'll talk to you again soon. All right, there's Daniel Phil Gonzalez, my friend. If only technology worked for us, and we're not in that part of California where we're having any fire danger. But maybe I jinx it by saying that. That's the other thing that's overshadowing everything, right? I had to break away from all the talk about the fires. I mean, if you have Roku, you can be anywhere in the country and you can get LA TV, and they have done a masterful job at being on top of all this. And if you watch the locals in LA, you're getting all the LA fire talk firsthand before the nationals do. I mean, the national folks are trying, but they don't have the wherewithal, and the best stuff they take from the locals. And so I was proud of my local news past, even though live shots were not necessarily the thing I was known for. But I did have some, I did do some live coverage of natural disasters, more so just disasters like an ammonia tank leak in San Jose affecting an entire neighborhood with toxic chemicals. That's just part and parcel of being a reporter. So I had to admit, I was admiring the work of the LA reporters, a lot of them Asian American. And right now, the story is most of the flames have come and gone through, most of Pacific Palisades, although there are some hot spots. But some people are going back home, and that's the next part of the story, the human part of the story. And it started yesterday in Pacific Palisades and also the Eaton fire in Altadena. And some great reporting, just talk to people about, oh, I lost my dad. There was a woman, Kimiko, I believe her name is Kimiko Nickerson, talked about her father, Rodney Nickerson, who was in his 80s, 83. He was fighting the fire with a hose, had lived in this house in Altadena since the 60s and wasn't going to leave. He said, I'll still be here. They had family there with him till like 11 o'clock that night. And then they left. He stayed behind. The next day they found him in bed and he was dead. And only because of the reporters being able to talk to people who are willing to share this story do we have a sense of at least one person confirmed. They have not confirmed or identified the other people who have died in this fire, and there could be as many as 10 at this point, but that's because most people are cooperating with authorities and they're not releasing any information. But so these reporters from KCAL, and you've seen some of their work chopped up and put on the various cable outlets, tell the story of Rodney Nickerson, tell the story of other people who, well, Nickerson is the deceased 83-year-old, sad. But then the other stories are as emotional, just people coming back to their ruined home, their sense of home. And that's where we are today in this third day of the story. People coming back. And then even as we get this, there's another layer of the story as the wind shifts and the wind kicks up new embers and the new embers kick up new fire. Hopefully they're controlled. Like on the first day, there was the Hollywood Hills fire, which is right there in the center of LA. So all the fire talk is depressing. Depressing because the cliche is, oh, it looks like a war zone. Oh, it looks like a bomb hit. Oh, it looks like it's terrible. It is. And then when they ask him about it, they said, there are no words. Yeah, there are no words. This is so profound that the best thing is a deep contemplation about where you are. That's why there are no words. I just saw a kid on CNN. That's the other thing. You talk to kids and kids say the darndest things, but sometimes they're so innocent, they say the truth. And one kid, 9-year-old kid, says to his father, hey, fresh start, Dad. It's a fresh start, which is a positive thing. I mean, the kid has to believe he has a future, right? He will have a future if the adults get off the dime and start doing something about climate change, because there is no doubt this whole situation with the fire is all about climate change and what we have and have not done to undo decades of burning fossil fuels and the pollution and the wrecking of our climate, our global temperatures. I mean, last year at this time, I was in LA. I was in LA experiencing like newsworthy floods. There were mudslides. I was in Santa Monica. There were floods all over. 10 months later, we're talking about such a change. We're talking about the driest winter, like 0.02 inches of rain. So we got the driest winter since 1964 in Southern California. And so you have the fuel, you have the Santa Ana winds, which you always have. But they were worse now. They were like in the 40 to 80 mile per hour range, sometimes even higher. And so you have the winds, and you have the vegetation, and all it takes is one spark, and you have uncontrollable fires. That's what we have. And I think the containment levels, and they're still in single digits. We're not out of this. And people who thought they were fine still have the weekend to sweat. People who thought after the first day that they were fine, the next day they weren't. All it takes is one ember, right? And friends of mine who are okay now, I hope they're still okay. I have friends in Altadena. I hope they're okay. They were traveling, but I hope they're okay. So all of this is, I think it's good. If you're like me, you're stuck watching. Not stuck, but you can't help but watch. You want to see, well, what's going on? Are they okay? Are they okay? Well, how is the fire going? And now it's getting to the point where, okay, people are concerned about the water issue, right? And it's been explained, not to the satisfaction of anybody. Everyone wants to point a finger. Trump brought up in his time at the sentencing, he brought up LA and the fires burning. He brought it up. Irrelevant, but he brought it up. And I just think, we have this situation. If we're watching, it's just time for all of us to have this massive wake-up call, right? Not just about climate change, but about things and spirituality and our relationship to each other, and about how we care for each other or not care. I think it's better if we care. But that's also some of the secondary stories we're seeing now, that people are just showing up with pots of soup to share for people in need. They're showing up to cook and give food and meals and bottled water. Their places set up so people can get clothing and hygiene kits. Can you imagine people, the stories of people going back to the houses to try to find anything, and hoping to find maybe, I don't know, like some lost artifact, a memory, a toy. Usually people just grabbed what they could, right? What would you grab? Grab your computer? Would you grab a picture on the wall? I mean, that's why I said in a previous show, 820 or 819, I said, yeah, you got to prepare a go bag. And what would you have, a big go bag, like a big rolly bag, a massive rolly bag, or would you get a little one, or maybe a backpack? You didn't see many people like that prepared. But maybe this is time to do that. I know after the first earthquakes hit, this is the big one, people in Northern California have talked about, yeah, we got something prepared. We got a tub. We're going to, it has all the food and snacks and water, and we got it ready. We're going to put it in the car and run off. What if you can't take that? Maybe a pack, some kind of mobile thing. I know, yeah, and maybe know where your important documents are. I mean, in the insurance department, the California Department of Insurance, they're having big seminars, and they want to help people one-on-one down in LA to deal with the insurance crisis. So that's going to be important. So if you're down there, afford yourself of that help from the California Department of Insurance. Anyway, it's just I've been following everything, just trying to catch all the bits of news. I thought KCAL has done a good job. KNBC, KTTV, the Fox station. They got well, they all have helicopters, but and they have that grid where you see where the streets are, so you know what you're looking at and where it is in relation. Anyway, I'm just been taken by the coverage. And if it wasn't for Jimmy Carter's funeral, I think I still would have just watched that all throughout yesterday. But thank goodness I watched Carter's funeral, because there was some stuff I didn't know about Carter. I mean, the big news sort of shrouds his term, his one term, the hostage crisis. Although, he probably did more than people thought to end that, and the credit was given to Reagan. But all the things that he did, and people just pointed out, all the things that he did, Carter did, that endure as policy, and you realize that Jimmy Carter he always gets tagged good man, bad policies. No, good man, good policies, enduring policies. And he's not the guy who just in his post-presidency showed his humanity. He was the kind of politician maybe that we need now. The kind of politician who could bring us together in a bipartisan way. And what came out in the funeral was how bipartisan Jimmy Carter really was. How he was an outsider who was different from regular politicians. And even though he sparred a lot with Gerald Ford, that eulogy that Gerald Ford wrote that was delivered by his son Steve was very heartfelt and very revealing about a side of Carter and a side of politicians that we don't see in America, that we should. So I love that part. On the eulogies that were given, Mondale's eulogy written by his son Ted, or read by his. I mean, these are all eulogies pre-written by Gerald Ford and Vice President Walter Mondale, former President Ford, and read by their sons as eulogies at the service. Tremendously insightful about who Jimmy Carter was. And then Jason Carter gets up and speaks. And he's really funny, right? He talks about his granddad in short shorts and Crocs, and talks about granddad being so frugal growing up in the Depression and saving Ziploc bags in the sink, or next to the sink after using them, like letting them hang dry so they could be reused. I mean, you get a sense about how green and environmentally sound, and how that's the way you think if you're thinking about more than yourself, but of everyone else, right? And then Jason Carter, who's now the head of the Carter Institute, they talked about how they eradicated, a parasite, this worm, and how they did it without medicine, They did it just by informing the people about better practices and how to deal with things, and they eradicated disease through better communication on a grassroots level. And this was done in all these third world countries, primarily Africa. And you think about all these things that Jimmy Carter did, and they had all the 5 living presidents there, including Donald Trump. And I just hope that some of this sinks in into Donald Trump. I just hope he understands that this is a good guy who doesn't call third world countries, asshole countries. This is a guy with tremendous respect for all of humanity, not just for the rich. This is how America should present itself to the world. This is how a president brings people together in the country, in our divided country. A president, if he's acting in his highest, best capacity, he's a uniter. He brings people together. But see, that's the problem with Trump. He needs to divide us in order to win. He needs to divide us in order to get a winning plurality. Let's not call it a majority, because it's not a majority. So I was just hoping, I hope Donald Trump is listening. And there are a couple of times that he's like nudging Obama, or certainly after Andrew Young spoke. Trump sort of like looks like he's talking to Obama, saying, good speech. I don't know if he said that. But I was paying attention to those first pews and see how people were. The Mike Pence was there, and Al Gore was there, and Dan Quayle was there, and Marilyn Quayle. I said, who's that one? That woman looks familiar. That's Marilyn Quayle. So the Carter funeral was, I thought it was full of some interesting points worth talking about. You hope Trump was listening, because this was like his lesson. How to be a good 47, how to be a good president, how to bring the country together. Jimmy Carter was not a wimp. Jimmy Carter wasn't a loser. Jimmy Carter was not just a good president in his post-presidency. He was a good president throughout his life, post-presidency and during the presidency. So a real appreciation for Carter. And then good singing. You had Garth Brooks, Trisha Yearwood. I mean, they sang John Lennon's Imagine from the country singer John Lennon. Imagine. No, it was something. Imagine, that's a good funeral song. I was born on John Lennon's birthday, so maybe for when I pass, I'll say, make sure you play Imagine, okay, me? Imagine. Well, that's all we can do is imagine. Imagine and hope that our leaders do the best thing, because there you have the living presidents. And I hope other Americans were watching on this National Day of Mourning yesterday, because maybe we'll get a sense about, people develop a sense of what a president should be like. So that was my hope going into today, right? Today, Friday. Trump was going to be sentenced. It was determined late in the afternoon, Friday, that the Supreme Court would not stop it. Trump wanted it to stop. Didn't want the sentencing to happen, because the reports were that Trump felt ashamed. He didn't want to go down. He look, you want to put your name, you believe in a brand, right? You're the guy who puts Trump on all the buildings. You put Trump on all the stakes. You're brand conscious, right? You don't want to be seen as the convict. You say that to pump yourself up, but you don't want to be seen as the convict. So he's sensitive. Trump is sensitive to that. But could he help himself? Today, when he spoke, when he was given the chance to speak, no, he didn't. I was going to play some, but you're just going to have to find it on C-SPAN. But basically, he just pretty much threw his accountants under the bus, even though the accountants pled guilty. As Dan pointed out early in our conversation, Trump said, hey, I call the business expense a business expense. Okay, why didn't you call it what it really was? This is the money I used to pay Stormy Daniels not to talk because we had sex one night. Oh, why didn't you just call it that? He didn't do that. He should have. If he copped to that, maybe I would have said, hey, that's why you were found guilty by a jury. But no, I'm innocent. I'm innocent. This is a witch hunt. This is a witch hunt. It wasn't a witch hunt. You can't call it a witch hunt when a jury of your peers finds you guilty of 34 felonies, and they're Class E felonies. Class Emil felonies? No, a different kind of Class E. And so he probably wouldn't have served time. He probably wouldn't have. I mean, he's still, he'd be a first offender. Imagine, though, if this had happened earlier, like in the summertime instead of in January of this year. What if it happened, 6 months ago? But delay has helped Trump. And so he did his best to speak out on his behalf, but I don't think he convinced anyone. Lawfare, they're coming to get me. As Dan put it, he sounded like he was being extra defensive. And for what? Because a legal expense was a legal expense. That's why he was in debt. No, a legal expense was for hush money payments, and labeling it as a legal expense was wrong. Falsification. So, but this was a unique no penalty sentence. And that's really, Judge Marchand pretty much let us know when he released a memo about a week ago. Said, yeah, I got to do this. I got to do this because this is the law. And the law says we got to add some finality to this case. And the finality is the sentencing. And once it's sentenced, once I deliver the sentence, you can go and do the appeal that you want. And he's going to appeal. You know that. But does he have a chance? Well, some people say that he only lost the Supreme Court 5-4. Justice Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett joined the liberals, the three liberals. So it was 5-4. There's 4 solid, throw this out, the conservatives. The compromise ones, Alito and Thomas, and then you have Gorsuch and Kavanaugh. All they need is one more. They probably would get Roberts, I think. I mean, or Coney Barrett. He thinks he has the court. He has the court. He has Alito. Alito called him up last week or, recently, knowing this case was up, and he asked him for a favor. Asked Trump to hire a former clerk. And yet Alito didn't feel that necessary to recuse himself from the vote. That's the kind of Supreme Court we have. So the odds are good that Donald Trump can get this overturned at the highest level. But there is some satisfaction that Alvin Bragg, the DA, New York DA, got this case done. And now we can hang the, I guess it would be a scarlet F for felon. I mean, not a scarlet A, but the scarlet, instead of a red long tie, an overlong red long tie, we could just hang a red F, and you can have the F be anything you want, I suppose, but I think felon would be the appropriate term. Felon would be the appropriate term. And, because he's all about brand, right? Even if it's a knockoff, it's all about brand. It's like, you can go down to New York, you can buy knockoffs of, LV bags and Yves Saint Laurent and all that. And as long as it says what it says, that's all people care about. I mean, brand conscious. So Trump is concerned about that. He's concerned about the brand because he has brand shame. Brand shame. He doesn't have shame about, did he do that with Stormy Daniels? I mean, he could cop to that. He could say, yeah, I did that. Tried to get her to hush up. But he doesn't. Because he's not ashamed about it. He's got brand shame. But he doesn't have shame. He should have shame. So this is the best we get. We get Donald Trump brand shamed, but not shamed. Although shamed would help him be a better president. And look, you got all these corporates and you got all these guys, bending knee and saying, hey, anything you want, Donald. We'll get rid of the fact checkers. I'm talking about Mr. Facebook. We'll get rid of the fact checkers. We'll get rid of DEI. Oh, Facebook, McDonald's getting rid of DEI. We're going to get rid of wokeness. Make America asleep again. That's what we're going to do. Don't worry, Donald. We're with you. You see? I mean, that's kind of the play. Everyone's doing it. Newspapers, Washington Post. Oh, yeah. We're going to do social media. People leaving the Post. They're going to lay people off. It's going to leave. Just the New York Times is kind of like the flagship of perceived truth. Someone's got to do that. So that's where we are as we enter 2025. That's the best we can hope for. We could hope for, we can hope for all this affecting the president-elect so he just becomes a nicer guy. I would support Trump if he was the guy in church. If he was that guy, the guy in the pew. If he was the guy in the pew, I might, we may not see eye to eye on everything. But, it doesn't have to be like we're all at loggerheads all 100% of the time. He's going to be president. But it's going to be loggerheads from the start. Because he wants to deport people. He wants to, except the H-1Bs. Keep the H-1Bs because those are the good ones. He wants to move affirmative action into immigration. So we get the good ones. We keep the good ones. Yeah. But so it'll be some, I'm hoping that he learns from this and becomes a better person. And maybe the funeral is like his his short course on Jimmy Carter. Like he didn't have to read any books. He didn't have to read any histories. He just could listen to the eulogies and say, yeah, that Jimmy Carter was a good guy. Good guy. I could be more like Jimmy Carter. He could. You say, yeah. Nah. But yeah, that would be okay. I mean, Jimmy Carter he and Gerald Ford hit it off. Gerald Ford. So, all right. So that's today's sentencing. Doesn't really, it doesn't have the kind of kick that it should, but it does brand Trump a felon, and people know, and maybe the shame will lead Trump to act better. Is that possible? I don't know. Is that possible? What would be better? Fairer? Less discriminatory? More fair, more just, less homophobic? One of the things that happened yesterday that no one talked about, and as I was depressed about the fires and all, I thought, oh no, I should talk about this, and that is a judge, I believe it was in Kentucky, or an appellate judge, threw out all the Title IX gains and protections for LGBTQ students. And I remember my daughter saying, or I asked my daughter, well, is there a state you'd like to, where we should live? And knowing that California is the most liberal, she said, nah, I think I'll stay in California. I like my rights. And it's the truth. I mean, right now, there's about 26 some states that have challenged LGBTQ protections. And this one law was a Title IX law, which added LGBTQ members to the provisions, that Title IX is this all inclusive. Well, it wasn't all inclusive. They added women. That's why you have women's sports, right? Got to include women. Title IX did that. I think Patsy Mink was the person behind that. The late Asian American stalwart representative from Hawaii. So I don't know what that means when Title IX for LGBTQ is reversed. I guess that just means if you were expecting a modern world where you were accepted and protected by the Constitution, after yesterday's reversal by a court, by a judge, I believe in Kentucky, that's it. Negated. That's part of the backward movement, just like we saw the protection of reproductive rights reversed, just as we're seeing protections on general civil rights moving backwards, voting rights moving backwards. That's where we're heading. Unless Donald Trump had a Jimmy Carter kind of awareness yesterday in church. One can hope. One can hope. Did he have that Jimmy Carter? I don't know. One can hope. All right. And then the fires. I don't know. I'm here's the thing. As a native look, I'm a native Californian. I'm a San Franciscan, native San Franciscan. we are prone to be at least competitive with LA. We're not, LA, we're rivals, right? Good-natured rivals, I might add. But we're taught at a young age that, oh, LA, ooh, beat LA, ooh, no. But I want to tell you, after watching LA News last couple days, since Monday, I love LA. I go down to LA, like I said, infrequently, but a couple times a year. And every time I go down there, I say, God, they beat into me that as a San Franciscan, I'm supposed to not like LA, which is kind of artificial, right? It is. It's silly. It's childish. When I'm more Randy Newman, right? I love LA. And now especially, we have to love LA. I mean, we have to love LA because LA is experiencing everything that America should be experiencing when it comes to this idea of climate change. I mean, you're experiencing climate change if you live in the Carolinas and got hit by the hurricane and the tornadoes. If you got hit by stuff in Florida, if you're experiencing this weird winter cold, it's all climate related. It's just that certainly the floods and the hurricanes, that's not temporary. That takes time. That you rebuild. But a fire, people don't necessarily understand the fires because they see the fires as taking place in these remote areas and not fires that with these winds, the winds kicking up the embers and the embers flying everywhere, including into densely populated areas. People aren't saying, oh, yeah, this is all related. This is all climate. Yeah, because like I was saying, a year ago, they had so much rain, it was flooding in LA in January. That was a year ago. Now, there's so little rain, it's so dry. You got the Santa Ana winds whipping up. You got one bit of flame. And that's the thing, that no one can say how it started. Was it an arsonist? They've got one guy for one smaller fire that happened just recently there being questioned, but no one knows. No one knows what happened or how it started. I mean, they were asking these questions Monday night. They don't know. But I heard the term first world climate refugees. That's what all these people are in LA now. I mean, and these people in LA, they're not rich, they're not without means, but they're not rich. I mean, you got a home in California, and you've got, your home's going to be worth upwards, depending on your mortgage, hundreds of thousands of dollars. So maybe you have some equity if you got some protection, but now you got rubble. So where's your equity? Now you got to hope that the insurance companies will be fair in making you whole. But we need a lot of empathy, and we need a lot of love for each other. And we're not at that point where we're handing it out. You know what I mean? We're going to have to see considering the situation, right? We got this catastrophic situation. So we need an extraordinary amount of love to counteract that. And we got a guy who will be president of the United States in about a few weeks, who does not seem to have that kind of capacity for empathy or compassion. That's where we're going to miss Jimmy Carter. That's the lesson that Carter could have taught Donald Trump at his funeral. Maybe some of that rubbed off, because we're going to need that. We're going to need that instead of someone who's going to go in angry and spiteful and ready to deport and throw out and ready to diminish anyone in his way. And that's America under that kind of leadership. Under that kind of leadership, the example is, hey, we're in a Darwinian world. Can't survive? Sorry. Now, this is when we need the opposite. We need compassion, love, understanding for each other. For each other. So, all right. Sorry about, I was going to be more apocalyptic with Dan, talking about the no penalty sentence for Trump and other things, but we had, I don't know, for some reason we had a bad connection. But maybe next time we'll get him on, and we'll be more trouble. We'll be trouble free. What else? Oh, that's it. We'll end it here. I'm just going to go back to Roku watching the fires. One reporter at Takeout, Jeff Wynn, and great interview with a guy who is sweeping up his home, just trying to make sense out of everything. And this is the thing that I noticed. Imagine me, television reporter in the 80s, San Francisco, when everyone was a white male practically in most places, except this one station in San Francisco that must have had one, two, three, at least three or four Asian Americans, some Latinos, not as many blacks. One, they weren't strong in terms of the African American population, but for the 80s, extremely diverse, and a staff that really looked like the area that it was covering, that area that it represented. So that was the old KRON, the old KRON, which was an NBC affiliate. So I was just looking through LA TV, and man, Colleen Williams was on KNBC. She was up here at KPIX for a while. When I say a while, I mean like 40 years ago. But she's been down there for a while. And she still looked good, Colleen. Tip of the hat to Colleen. Still doing it. Tom Vakar, still doing it. Oh, actually, he's up here in Channel 2. Channel 2 sent a lot of their people. KTVU sent a lot of their people down to LA. Just like, you send down your fire trucks from Northern California down to Southern California. I know. I just, the local TV folks were really great. They got the right story. They're telling the right stories. And now we're going to hear from people about their lives and about how they're struggling, how they're dealing with the fire. I just don't know. But It seems like almost insurmountable, but it's not. It's not insurmountable. Not if we're all looking out for one another. That's the way it's going to have to be. Hey, so all right, that's it for me. We're going to say goodbye. We like to close with a little meditation, a little loving kindness. And so, as I wish for me, I wish for you. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. And may you live with ease. Emil Guillermo here. Till next time.